everyone! So for homework number 1, we're working with a white colored pencil on black paper, and we're focusing on drawing light and focusing on how to create tones of one color simply by pressure and directional blending. So to start with, draw whatever from your black and white photograph you've selected from the sources in normal pencil. And then I like to do right next to it sort of a gradient to see how many different shades of white and grays I can get out of one colored pencil, and then sort of compare them to my reference image so I can start identifying how many different places I might be hitting with these different colors. So as you can see, I've sort of colored in little areas. Some of them are very, very white. Some of them are, by loosening pressure, I'm making it lighter and lighter, so that's actually making it darker and darker because we're working on black paper. So there's 2 approaches that you can use when you start your actual coloring in of your piece. The one I'm using is I like to go around and hit all of the whitest areas first. So everywhere that there's a bright highlight that I know is going to be bright white, I'm going ahead and doing that. It's pretty hard pressure to get that bright white, and I'm using a pretty sharp point on my pencil to start to really get those points in. So I'm picking out every area in this photo that I see bright white and filling it in. So I did sign those outlines that are highlighted along the right side. I'm doing the highlights that are in each of those little nobbins at the top. This is a very quick little study for you all to follow along with. So another thing that we can use when we're practicing on this, while we're working with just one tone, is to focus on how your directionality of your brush stroke affects the color and the shaping of the object. So as you can see, I'm starting to work around the edge here, and I'm keeping my brush stroke moving around the edge with the key so that it sort of runs with it. When I go back over that, I can run crosswise and it will make a very flat space, or I can continue to use my directional building to kind of shape it as a round object. Still picking out all of those little highlights and moving into some of the more mid-tones to help build up the lettering on this piece. The second attack you can do is to kind of lightly shade everything in mid-tone that you see, and then work on bringing both your highlights up and carving your shadows out with an eraser. There are lots of little highlights in these letters, so working on kind of getting those picked out, also knowing that I'm going to end up coloring over a lot of them to create the medium tone that's the back of the key. So my source here doesn't really disappear into blackness like some of yours do. If it disappears into blackness, it's a good opportunity to practice that gradient like we've worked on in both acrylic and watercolor. So for this little long portion on the bottom of the key, this is where I'm really using that more build everything out into medium tone, and sort of then adding in highlights. There's nothing in this section that's very shadowed, so I'm lightly coloring the whole thing. To get a flatter coverage, instead of using a sharp point, I've rotated it to a portion that's kind of flattened on the bottom, and using a very light pressure and some different directionality in my brush strokes, pencil strokes, is how I'm creating it to be more flat, more random. There's some modeling on this piece that I'm using the flatter part of my pencil to build in. A very sharp pencil is nice if you want the bright whites. A very flat pencil is nice if you're trying to cover lots of area and do it softly and make it flat. Your kneaded eraser will work really well for just lightly picking up things. So if you color something in with light pressure and it's just got a little bit too much shading, your kneaded eraser will do a great job of sort of picking that back out for you. So you can work subtractively as well. So right here, it kind of got too far in there, so you use the kneaded eraser to soften the edges of that gradient. Now looking at it as a whole composition, I realized that piece needed a little bit more highlighting, so you can always keep adding more white on top of it. The thing with colored pencil is that paper doesn't have almost any tooth. So at some point it has taken as much wax buildup as it possibly can, and it's not going to get any brighter. When you're working in one color, that doesn't affect everything so much, but kind of keep it in mind, notice how it works while we're working with just white, so that later when you're looking at layering colors, you can kind of tell how much you can layer over one spot before nothing sticks anymore. So I'm starting to go through here and add in the medium tones. I'm doing them very softly with that kind of flat edge like we talked about. In some areas, I'm using a more circular pencil stroke, and in some areas, I'm kind of cross-hatching it to help build in directional. But right now, I'm just trying to get sort of a flat medium tone over the whole thing for anywhere that there isn't shadows under the letters or around edges. So now I've got sort of a medium tone in. I'm going to keep looking between my source and my final and start picking out these little highlights and areas of high shine in the metal where it's been worn down. So it tends to be darker around the edges and underneath the lettering, and lighter around the far outside edges where it's been handled a lot. So as I bump my whites and midtones brighter, that black begins to look darker, so it begins to look more like a true shadow. I know that this black paper is not like the blackest black. So now I'm starting to use that directional stroke again, wrapping around it for all the areas that have that high shine highlight on it. I think it just helps everything have a rhythm to it and unify so it doesn't look so patchy, which can happen with colored pencil when we're coloring in different sections at a time. It's hard to get it to look very smooth all the way across. So the sort of unifying directional stroke helps do that. The letters on this end kind of disappear into the highlight of the edge, so I'm trying to make sure that they match and blend in together. They don't stand out as much as all the other ones. So here we have the finished result of it. You can see the 6 colors I used kind of on the side, the black all the way to the white, and then you can see some of the detail work on the sky. I hope that helps. I'll also be posting some demos for some cross-hatching and tests you can do with just your other colored pencils, and let me know if you have any questions.